Hey everyone, so the last vlog I talked about the upcoming season of the Orville, and this time around I'm going to talk about the upcoming season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. So in preparation for this, I've actually been re-watching through season 1. So I have to say, before Discovery first aired, I was a bit more optimistic about the show. There were a lot of naysayers, there was a lot of negativity about the internet. I tried to remain positive about the whole thing, and then I have to say that after watching season 1, let's say Discovery was not without its flaws. I think the biggest part of the problem is that they have tried to fit this show in between Enterprise and the original series, and they've disregarded a lot of the look and the feel that Star Trek has from those time periods. Enterprise paid a lot of respect, and that just comes from people who are passionate about Star Trek being behind Enterprise. Discovery happening in between the two, you would expect there to be a bit of an advancement from Enterprise, but a little bit of precursor from the original series. And that hasn't happened. They modernized Discovery. Visually, Discovery belongs after the Next Generation series. It's that much more advanced in the Star Trek timeline. So there's a big problem there from the start. Then also, because of the time period that they've set it in, there's limitations in the stories that they can tell. And in the first season, they did a war with the Klingons that has never been referred to, and certainly is difficult to believe played out as it did in Discovery, because Earth was nearly taken over by the Klingons. This has never been referred to in any of the other Trek series. So, and even in an episode of DS9, a Klingon actually said, "Even we never thought to attack Earth," and yet they were very close to doing so in Discovery. So, a lot of disparity there. Let's go to some of the positive stuff. Discovery has brought Star Trek back to the small screen where it belongs. On my second watch through, I'm appreciating it a lot more, and maybe that's because I know where to keep my expectations, but there are some good characters, certainly, and I think it's going to be interesting to see where they go. The idea of focusing on a central character rather than an ensemble is an interesting one. Michael Burnham's not a dislikable character, but it doesn't feel Trek the way that they're portraying it, especially because of what she's done, and she's trying to sort of get by, stick to her beliefs, stick to being Starfleet, even though she's been with her rank and that has been taken away from her because of the actions she did in the first episodes. She mutinied against her captain. They blame her for starting the war, even though that's a stretch. So yeah, her character goes on this story arc. There's love, there's tension, there's all sorts of things. That's very different to any Trek we've had before. Production values are definitely higher than any Trek we've had before. Each episode feels like a movie, but each episode feels dark, and it doesn't have that inspiring lightness that we're used to. Even from the darkest Trek episodes of before, there was a different sort of feel and tone to them. But my biggest issue, I think, is not so much the technology side of things. I can understand that they need to keep it modern and relevant. It's not the fact that the ships look different, or it's the Klingons. I just can't get into any episode that deals with the Klingons, and unfortunately that's quite a lot of them, because this first season arc dealt with the war with the Klingons. They decided to change the look of them, which has happened before. So that's okay. I can kind of get by with that. The Klingons don't look drastically different, but they're certainly not the humans from the original series. But they're not the Klingons from the Next Generation, and that either. But for whatever reason, with all the prosthetics and stuff, the actors and actresses seem to have a lot of problems speaking the Klingon language. It sounds like they're gargling marbles in their mouth, which never happened before. So, and then of course there are these long extended sequences where they're just talking in Klingon with subtitles, and it just gets a little bit, it just got too much. So not only did they change the Klingon appearance, they changed all of their ships. Except for maybe one, the Klingon ship of the dead. None of the other Klingon ships resembled anything we'd seen in Star Trek before. And some of them are just like ships of the week that could have been from any other series. It was really annoying. And in one episode, one of these ships comes along and it gets identified as a Klingon D7 battlecruiser. And anyone who knows Star Trek knows what a D7 battlecruiser looks like. And it wasn't this ship. You know, they could have made it at least resemble it, pay homage to it. If they could have had a plethora of other ships, but if they're gonna name a D7, make it look like a D7. Thankfully, later in the show, they go to the Mirror Universe. They reference the USS Defiant, which is a callback to Enterprise and the original series. And thankfully, the wireframe that comes up for that ship looks at least something like what the Defiant looks like as we saw it in those TV shows. So that was a little bit of a redemption there. And then right at the end, we meet a very familiar ship. And it has to be the Enterprise. But they changed the look of that too. Now, it's not that it looks ugly, but why did they change the look of it? We know what the Enterprise looks like. And then they've gone and made it different. Now, I don't mind the look of it, but perhaps it should have been another ship. You know, if you're going to put the Enterprise in it, people know what the Enterprise looks like. Yeah, anyway. So, oh, and, you know, we went off to the Mirror Universe for a few episodes. That was kind of cool, but there were some really poorly kept secrets. You know, there's the one of a Klingon sleeper agent. That was pretty obvious. And then there's the one about Captain Lorca. Maybe it's because of the access to the internet, but I started seeing that one coming a long way out. And then as soon as his cover's blown, he just becomes a typical mustache twirling villain who's out to get the Emperor. And it just kind of lost it for me a bit. He was quite plausible right up until the point that he was found out, and then it just all went downhill from there. Yeah, I didn't really like those last couple of episodes where they tried to wrap things up. The Emperor coming across and then being recruited into Section 31, that's a big stretch as well. And as of today, when this is being recorded, she's now getting her own Star Trek TV show. Yeah, I mean, look, I love Michelle Yeoh. Nothing against her. I just think the premise for this series is going to be a bit weird. And yeah, and then at the end, to wrap up the Klingon War, they hatch a plan from an evil emperor from an alternate universe to go to the enemy's home world and blow it up from the inside with the Discovery. This is not a Starfleet thing that we would do or agree to or even fathom as a good idea, and yet they went ahead and did it. And then thankfully we didn't have to blow them up, but then we give the Klingon homeworld over to a Klingon prisoner who is using the bombs as leverage for her to become Chancellor. That wouldn't happen either. The Klingons would have fought her and said, nah, get lost. So the whole Klingon thing was really annoying. And so yeah, that's my rant on season 1. I'm looking forward to season 2 because I think they're stepping away from the Klingon War. And, you know, there's this new thing, there's this Red Angel or whatever, and there's these signals and stuff. Now, I think the problem that season 2 is going to face is that it's going to have Captain Pike. They said they weren't going to have Spock, but we know we're going to see Spock. So we've got these characters that we already know, and they're putting them into Discovery. Now, are they trying to create buy-in for fans who are maybe a bit soured from season 1? But Discovery should be able to stand on its own. And so it's going to be interesting to see what they do with season 2. I'm liking what I'm seeing from the previews, but I've been burned by that in the past as well. I think Anson Mount looks like he's going to do a great job as Pike. He's the fourth maybe actor to play him throughout of all Star Trek, but yeah, he looks like he's going to do a good job. It's going to be interesting to see how his role plays out aboard Discovery. He's going to take command of Discovery. He's going to do whatever. Ethan Peck as Spock is an interesting choice. I don't know any of his previous work, but he looks like he's cast well. Be interesting to see how he goes with that. I think they're going to touch on why he smiles. He smiled in the cage, and a few things like that. Ultimately, I hope they're going to step away from the whole war aspect, dark things. Obviously, it's going to be there's going to be episodic arcs, of course, and there's going to be whatever this red angel thingamajiggy is. But let's hope they come back to discovering and exploring a bit more. You know, some of the best episodes from season 1 were when they were on an alien world and they were exploring. Those episodes were great. They were, you know, that was back to what Star Trek's about, exploration and strange new worlds, and those episodes ticked that off quite a bit. There's not to say that the episodes that had the twists and the action and the character development weren't interesting, but they're not what we were used to from Star Trek. So I'm keeping an open mind about season 2. I'm going to try and catch up real quick. I've only got a couple of days to catch up on the end of season 1, fit in the short treks if I can as well, and then I'll be ready to see what happens with the Discovery and Captain Pike. Yeah, that got a bit ranty, but anyway, I'll see how this video turns out. What are your thoughts for season 2? I know a lot of internet comments suggest that people have not even given Discovery a look, and I think that's partially to do with it being on a on online platform, especially in America. I know there's a lot of issues around that. We're lucky in Australia that it comes out on Netflix, so, and I have access to Netflix, so yeah. Anyway, sound off below. I'm optimistic, but cautiously so. I mean, my initial impression of season 1 wasn't that great. On the rewatch, I'm enjoying it and appreciating it a little bit more, but there's still those episodes at the end that that I took issue with, especially just some of their tactics to winning the Klingon War were just really, really stupid, or just not Starfleet. Anyway, enough of that. We'll see how we go. Maybe I'll do a wrap up at the end of season 2. Yeah, I'll see you in the next one, guys. It's probably going to be another Star Trek related one. There's a few more things to talk about. Anyways, see yous.